there, this is Dr. Rob, the Referral Doc. How's it going? Thanks for joining us on the Special Dentalist podcast, where we help specialists become special. Last week, we had a really good episode where we talked about the 5 things you don't want to do to tick off your general dentist, the referring doctors. Go take a listen to that if you haven't had a chance to. Today, we're going to be talking about 3 reasons why you should bail out general dentists when they totally botch it up. I know this is a difficult thing for a lot of specialists to do when general dentists are constantly expanding what they're trying to do and getting out of bounds of what they should be doing, and you guys are left with picking up the pieces and trying to help them when they totally botch it up. You know, it reminds me of a story that I'd like to share. Me and my 2 brothers, Brandon and Mike, a few years ago, we heard of this place called the Bicknell Bottoms, and it was a couple hours away, and we heard about these big old trout fish that were caught in there, and we loved to fly fish, and we were really excited to go and try this out. We saw some pictures of Brandon's friend, and so we got on our waders, got up early, headed out there, and headed out towards this stream. Now, most of the stream fishing that we did was right on solid shore, into rivers, off rocks, that type of thing. But the Bicknell Bottoms is kind of unique. It's kind of a marshy, muddy area that has a flow of stream that goes down through the center of that. And the reason why there's such big trout in there is because it's very difficult to fish. It's so muddy. So we weren't really prepared. We didn't really know what we were getting into, but we go kind of tromping through out into the willows and onto some little tufts of grass. As we're getting out there, they become more sporadic, and we're getting more into the mud, and we finally get to where we're getting close to where we can just get so excited about these fish when Mike, who is in front of me, he suddenly goes down over his knees, and he's up to his thighs in this mud. And if you've ever had your feet in mud, you know it's really, really claustrophobic. And he starts freaking out like, oh man, I can't move. So I just go kind of running in after him without really paying attention what I was doing. In the process, he flung his pole up, and his lure caught my hand, and the barb went right into my hand, and boy, that hurt really bad. While I was trying to get that out, I was getting sinking deeper and deeper into the mud, and before I knew it, both of us were stuck up to our thighs in mud, and there was no getting out of there. We were leaning and pulling on the willows. There was just no way to get out. So luckily, Brandon had not been stuck yet. Brandon came out a little more cautiously and stayed up on the willows and up on the tufts of grass that had a little foundation to them. And with a lot of hard work, it wasn't easy, but we were able to finally get out of there. And we did not do very much fishing. Let's just say we were happy to just get out of there with our lives, honestly. That I share that story because there's a couple of parallels with what we're talking about here. The first one I think about is the excitement for the big fish, for the general dentist. And I talk a whole podcast about this down the road, where we talk about general dentists, when to refer. But I think a lot of times the general dentists get in trouble because there's a couple of reasons why I found myself getting into areas that I shouldn't be getting into, procedures I probably shouldn't be doing. One of them is being talked into it by a friend or a family member, where you feel like, they don't want to go somewhere and see somebody else. They don't want to pay that extra money to see a specialist. I can probably do it for them. A lot of times you get in trouble that way. The other big fish you might be going after is when things are a little tight and you're thinking, oh man, that's some good money that I don't want going out the door. I could probably do that myself. I know that I don't really feel too good about it, but I definitely want to keep that here. And then you can get into trouble. So there was actually an experience that I had 2 months out of getting out of dental school. I had done a good job in dental school, I felt, and I was a pretty good clinician. Of course, you all feel like that coming out of dental school, I can conquer the world. I had a friend come in, and she had this really strong frental attachment here on the mandibular frental attachment. And I thought, hey, I read about this in the book. I saw it. We taught about it. We were taught about it in oral surgery. and it can't be that hard. I just snip, snip, and a little suturing. And so I said, yeah, sure, I can do it. She kind of was like, oh, please do it for me. Don't send me on. I got talked into it. And, I still remember going home that day and bragging to my wife how good a job I did and how I did this really complex surgery. But I was patting myself on the back pretty good for doing that. And it looked pretty good after that, after I was done. The problem that I had is I'd never experienced kind of how to take care of it. And what happened is I had her come back 2 weeks later, and it had actually folded and attached on itself to the attached gingivis. So I went to pull the lip out, and the attachment was actually far stronger than when it originated. And there was a lot of scar tissue in there. And at this point, my whole jaw dropped and I just didn't know what to do. So I went in and talked to my brother, who's a dentist as well. And he said, well, you better talk to the periodontist. So I call up the periodontist. I'd never met him before. I'd only been out a couple of months. And I'll tell you, I really went in very humble, feeling like a tail between my legs, just like, oh my gosh, I don't know what happened here. And the specialist was super nice to me. He let me know that he understood and that he'd help take care of her. And so I sent her down, and he did a wonderful job taking care of her. And to this day, I really, really appreciate him coming and helping me. That's the second thing that I wanted to point out from that story of being caught in the mud, is how great it felt to be rescued. It's just one of those things where when you're in this place where you can't help yourself and somebody else comes in and pulls you out, you have this feeling of, it's just, there's no better way to build a bond. So if you're wanting to build a bond with a dentist, then be there for them. What's difficult is when you pull them out and they go diving back into the mud over and over again, right? So that's another thing that you need to decide, is how often should you go running in after them when they continue to clearly not learn a lesson from it. The other thing is how great it felt for the patient. That's the second reason why you should be doing this, helping general dentists out, is to help the patient. You are a specialist. A lot of times you're the only specialist in the area that can help out. And if you're not going to help them out, thinking about the patient, where are they going to go? So as you think about the patient, that can really help make your decision of whether or not you should help out or not. There's another experience that I had where a general dentist in our area was placing an implant on the maxilla in the front, and there was a little fracture on the buccal plate, really thin buccal plate. And I think what happened is they came in with it attached to the drill that was spinning too fast, and it zipped it up, and the implant actually went through, perforated out the buccal plate, and it all happened like that. It went out the buccal plate and actually got, I got a little too into it. Didn't go up her nose, but it did come up here right next to her eye. And can you even imagine? I can't even believe it. But yeah, she was showing me pictures. There was an implant literally up underneath the fascia here, up underneath her tissue, right mesial to her eye. And they had, at that point, the general obviously had to go get an oral surgeon. Luckily, there was an oral surgeon in the office, came up and took a look at it. The oral surgeon saw that this was a pretty big case. He was way out in the mud. And this oral surgeon wisely said, I'm not going to go diving in after this by myself. So he called up the ENT in town, and who came over as well. And together they were able to kind of strategize where to go in and take that implant out. But talking to that patient as she came to me later, and I started working with her, how appreciative she was for that oral surgeon and that ENT that came in and helped her. Could you imagine if they were just like, sorry, you got yourself into that mess, I'm not going to help you out. So that's the second reason why you should go and help someone out of the mud, is for the patient's sake. The third thing I wanted to point out was to just kind of refocus on the fact that I went diving in after Mike without any regard to getting stuck myself. And you really need to be careful about that as you're a specialist going out. So if you feel like you can still have a solid footing underneath you and it's not too outside of getting too risky, then yeah, go in and just help them out. But if it is something like what I suggested there, where it's a little bit, even for a specialist, it might be a little dicey for you, go get some other help. Get another person to come in and just give you some ideas. And don't be afraid to go to other specialists and collaborate on those. So the last reason why I believe that you should help get a general dentist unstuck is, the first one was for the doctor, the second was for the patient, and the third one is for yourself. You know, you have a really high skill set that's really specified, and you have opportunity to serve your just fellow men and women, brothers and sisters, and you know, when you have that gift, it does a lot of good for you to be able to share that and to be able to give. At the end of this life, it doesn't matter how much money you make. It matters about relationships and what you've done for other people. And so if you do it mainly just for that, to help that patient out and for yourself, it will help make you a better person. Okay, so that's it for this week. Next week, we're going to talk about the legality of sending referrals in-house. So if you have multiple practices, sending referrals back and forth to each other in-house, how to do that legally. We'd like to thank Referral Web for sponsoring and producing this show. If you haven't checked them out, go to ReferralWeb.com and take a look at the best referring platform there is on the market.